Kids love to feel accepted. And they form little clubs and gangs for that sense of community and unified purpose. There are fan clubs where members are, of course, fanatical over an agreed subject, and anyone not as nuts is rejected. So imagine my surprise when I heard of the Jesus Kids Club. A 6-part DVD on how 3 children share and become Christian ideals, help various people around the neighborhood, and discriminate against any kid who's not a Christian by having a Jesus Lovers Only Treehouse Church. Despite how wrong the main premise may seem, it's important to remember that absolutely everything always has a good intention behind it. Cute, innocent kids, that's the hook. But a treehouse for Jesus? That's the good hook. So our first story is The Best Reward, and it introduces our 3 main characters, Chris, Diana, and Alex.
Class president, football star, class favorite, and undefeated chess champion. Yeah, Chris wasn't any of those things. Nope.
Impressed? Interested? Invested? Nope. Diana and Alex both excel in their own skills, and as a result belong to certain groups academically.
It didn't bother Chris that he wasn't in any clubs, because he'd started a club of his own for kids who believed in Jesus. He didn't exactly win an award for starting that club, but that was okay. Chris tried not to focus on winning things, and just tried to live his life the way that Jesus would want him to live.
I wonder if Jesus was caught off guard by the flash in that picture. It's nearing the end of the school year, so Chris sets out to win one of the competitions and possibly an award of his own. Unfortunately, Chris loses the bake sale because he gives his cupcakes for free to children who can't afford them, the scavenger hunt because he decides to help Miss Orange in moving some bags.
School race. Chris was a great runner. He could do this. The race was on. He was in the lead and doing a fine job. It looked like Alex would be getting second place. It looked like Alex really wanted to win the race. Chris slowed down just a little bit so Alex could win.
You slowed down gradually before coming to a complete stop. Now that might help you on your driver's test, but in a race it's offensive and a little condescending.
But the last day of school came, and Chris hadn't won anything as usual. But as he looked around him, he realized that you don't always need a trophy to stand out in the crowd.
Okay, what is this? The dark room where everyone has a trophy? That was a little disturbing. I wonder... This is not a horror. It's for 8-year-olds. I think. Unestablished demographic!
We don't always see the life that God saves. This is the creepy culvert that sits right between Alex's house and the animal shelter. It's also where Zombie Cat lives. Alex was scared of Zombie Cat. Alex was also scared of carrots. He hated carrots. Especially carrots that looked like Zombie Cat. But luckily that only happened in his dreams. Most of the time. Every week, Alex got $4 for his allowance, and he liked to give 2 of those dollars to the animal shelter on the other side of the culvert. And for a mission like that, Alex had to become more than a kid. He had to become the Humane Kid.
Oh my god! It's purple!
Otherwise known as Spanned Alex. Alex loved animals, except Zombie Cat. There was always one puppy in particular that Alex always cared for, a little white puppy named Cookie. Alex would buy puppy food for him, say hi to the kitties, and be on his way. And even though Alex was scared of Zombie Cat, he would always leave a can of kitty food on the ground for him. Did Zombie Cat ever eat the food? Alex never knew. He was usually too busy running and screaming to notice.
So Alex gets into a routine. Visit the puppy, say hi to the kitties, leave something for Zombie Cat, run away, rinse and repeat.
But one day, Alex noticed that his favorite puppy was missing. Miss Orange, who worked at the animal shelter, told him that his puppy had gotten sick and had died during the night.
No, BS. A dog doesn't just get sick and die in one night. It had to be something that you could have caught a week ago had you been doing your job, I guess. I mean, seriously, should we call the government? Is there a potential outbreak of some quick-killing, non-screenable puppy pathogen?
It was a long and lonely walk home. Alex was very upset, but he still left some food for Zombie Cat on his way through the culvert. Why did his favorite puppy have to die? But we don't always see the life that God saves. You see, Zombie Cat was actually a mommy cat with 2 baby kitties. Alex hadn't saved 1 life. He'd saved 3.
Aww. Sad kid, sad story. Next.
Diana, of course, was just the opposite. She was happy every day for the blessings that God had given her, and she wanted to share that happiness with others. "Good morning," she would say. Meh. Her idea was to design cards for people, starting with Mr. Buckle, to let them know that Jesus loved them. She spent a whole hour on this card just for Mr. Buckle. Beautiful.
Her cards aren't exactly well received, so she gets help from Franny, a little girl in the neighborhood who likes to draw. They work on the cards in Diana's kitchen, which is remarkably similar to Chris's kitchen, even down to the photos, wow. Still, no one embraces the cards. Okay, but for real, the only person who benefited from the cards was Franny, which means that sometimes you only make a difference in one person's life. Still a weird ending, but sweet.
Sometimes you have to be lying down to see Jesus. Just ask Gum. There he is. He would always creep around the neighborhood and make life generally difficult for the other kids. He was especially hard on Chris, Diana, and Alex as they tried to tend to club business.
Ooh, club business. So what, you guys play games or you just read the Bible? Oh. So basically, Gum torments the kids.
One of the problems was that Gum had never seen Jesus before, and they decided to bake him a pan of his favorite brownies. He accepted, then chased them home. And being nice only seemed to make him angrier. Finally, they gave up.
I know the 3 of you can take him. Real Gum gets chewed, blown, or stepped on. Take your pick.
One day they noticed that Gum was missing. It was kind of nice in a way, but at the same time they knew something was wrong. It turned out that Gum had gotten sick. Very sick.
Oh my god, what if he has what that dog had?
Chris, Diana, and Alex went to visit him later that day. He opened his eyes, and for the first time in his life, he saw Jesus right there in front of him. Because sometimes you have to be lying down to see Jesus.
Are you high?
What? No, I'm not high.
You are high as a f***ing kite!
Now we're at number 5, Remy's Carnival. I think we figured out the speed. The kids resolved their issues using peace, persistence, and of course...
lasers! Yes, stand back or face the fury of Metal Gunzerbot with his rapid
It's
fists.
Alex's favorite toy brand, and he's a little obsessed.
It was sometimes a bit difficult to get Alex's attention because he always had his head in the clouds. Alex? Alex?
In this episode, Franny and a boy named Remy can't attend a carnival because their parents can't afford it. But aren't these the same 2 kids from Ep 1 where Chris had to give them cupcakes for free? It's weird how neither family can afford carnival tickets or cupcakes, but somehow stay afloat in this middle-class suburbia land. Hey son, I found a pizza crust in the neighbor's garbage. Hope you're ready for a fight. Chris and Diana decide to stay behind opening day and create their own rides and prizes for a homemade carnival.
Alex arrived on the scene with his wagon of robots to watch the event. He was more interested in playing than helping, but when he saw how much work Chris and Diana had done, he felt bad that he'd been so selfish. While Chris and Diana had been thinking about others, Alex had just been thinking about himself.
He's nowhere near as generous as other 5-year-olds. Remy's fishing for prizes. Unfortunately, Diana's run out of unique things to give him since he's already won 3 crosses.
But suddenly, Remy caught something. They were all amazed when up from behind the wall came a metal Gunzerbot. Remy was shocked. And after that, he caught a Shock Zorbatron. And after that, a Gold Omni Wheels. It was the happiest day of Remy's life. Alex was a little sad that he'd given away his robots, but felt very good that he'd made someone else so happy.
It's sweet, but sweet only takes you so far. I want a story with substance, something that goes beyond Nickelodeon, beyond PBS. I want the real deal, a story to make me feel something good.
Sometimes all you have to do is keep praying for your sandwich. Mr. Buckle. He was the meanest and grumpiest old man in town. Not many people talked to Mr. Buckle, except for Chris. You see, a while back, Chris decided to make it part of his weekly routine to play a game of chess with Mr. Buckle every Friday. Because even though Mr. Buckle seemed grumpy, Chris knew he was probably very lonely too. So every Friday, Chris would go to Mr. Buckle's house for a game of chess. And every time he went, he would take a sandwich to eat before their game started. Chris always said a prayer before eating his sandwich.
No, chess is boring, but... Oh, you're praying. Okay.
Even though Mr. Buckle thought it was silly. Mr. Buckle had no room in his life for prayer. He had his grumpy old friends, his grumpy old family, his grumpy old dog, and his grumpy old money. And with all that stuff, who needed to pray? After Chris ate his sandwich, they would play chess. Chris would always lose. Mr. Buckle would laugh at him. And then... And that's the way it would go. By the time the next week rolled around, Chris really didn't want to go back in. But he did. He got out his sandwich and said a prayer.
Dear God, kill this man. And thanks for the sandwich.
Mr. Buckle made fun of him as usual. They played chess. Chris lost. Mr. Buckle laughed. And... the next time Chris considered just not saying a prayer. At least then he wouldn't get laughed at. But no, Chris wanted to say a prayer, even if Mr. Buckle made fun of him. Lost again? The next week Chris really didn't want to go back in. But he did. This time Mr. Buckle's grumpy old friends were there. Chris got out his sandwich and said a prayer to tell God thank you. Mr. Buckle's friends thought it was amusing.
He's praying. We lost our faith in Vietnam.
Chris and Mr. Buckle played their game. Chris lost. Everyone laughed. And Mr. Buckle wasn't going to change. Chris started to just turn around and leave, but he stopped and prayed that God would give him strength. Chris turned and went inside. Mr. Buckle seemed different this time. He'd had a very bad week and was very sad. Mr. Buckle's friends didn't like him when he was sad, so they weren't there. His family wasn't there for him either. They were too busy with other things. And Mr. Buckle's money couldn't make him feel any better either. He had no one, and Chris saw how lonely he really was. Chris took out his sandwich and said a prayer. Mr. Buckle didn't make fun of him this time. In fact, Mr. Buckle closed his eyes too. All of those other weeks Chris's visit hadn't meant anything to him, but today it meant everything. Chris was there after everyone else had left. As for Chris, he was starting to learn that sometimes all you have to do is keep praying for your sandwich.
So that was the Jesus Kids Club. Was it perfect? No. Was it better than I thought it would be? Yes. This DVD is by no means god-awful. Rather, it's God-lovable. Now, I don't agree with denominational treehouses and club friendships based solely on religion. I understand you're a private residence, you can play with who you want, but it's nowhere near PC. Sudden puppy death syndrome is actually a real thing, and I applaud them for having the guts to put this element in one of their episodes, even if it was a load of crap they gave us at the last second. Chris and Diana's kitchen is the same, even down to the pink soap and plate of cookies, and why is a 10-year-old wearing eyeshadow? I appreciate the kid's persistence, but having Gum see Jesus only after all else fails and he's gotten mysteriously sick is kinda iffy. The way they play it out, it's like if Jesus knocked him down, so to speak, because sometimes you have to be lying down to see Jesus. If that's what they were going for, it's kinda vicious.
God got a hold of me and there's nothing you or I can do about it.
The robots look incredible, especially considering this show's very modest animation. But I still don't get how Franny and Remy's families are so dirt poor, but still have green lawns and garbage pickup. Checkmate is the best episode in my opinion. It's everything the series does well put in one. One note I would make is that Chris should have prayed before he came. 1, that he would specifically touch the man's heart, 2, to thank God for the meal, and 3, for a safe trip home. Still, I admire Chris's perseverance, and what helps this episode is that all of the elements are realistic enough to give it emotional depth. This is a dream world, but it's not a perfect one, with maturity to realize that you can't always go by your own code, and that sometimes bad things happen, regardless of our intentions. This isn't what I was expecting from the Jesus Kids Club at all. I was pleasantly surprised today. This DVD was made and released at around about 2010. Looks more like 03, I know. But the episodes are lovable, mostly harmless, and it's just good. Well, this was a little young, but next week let's take a look at something a little more teen-oriented.
Was that Diana didn't know what to do with the rest of her sparkly, colorful crosses.